Time for our Tri-State Office Furniture tweet of the night. Comes from Sunday Night Football on NBC. It comes from that account. The NFL playoff races are heating up. The best 6 and 17 is, you got New Orleans, you got Vegas, you got the Dolphins, you got Minnesota, you got the Falcons, the Eagles, and Washington. Paul, I'm curious to hear your answer to this question about who the best 6 and 7 team is on this graphic, because the Steelers have faced a couple of these teams and lost to two of them. So I'm curious, the best team on that group that you saw there.
Well, I mean, I think the Saints are probably the best team, but they've got, around the quarterback, and that's
right.
The problem with them is the most important position. They've got some issues. I think the Eagles have played better recently, and I think the other team that's played really well recently is the Dolphins.
Yes.
So,
yes.
I might go with the Dolphins out of that group. I know Washington currently.
Sorry, the Dolphins are my pick. Their defense has been really good.
I think that right. They figured some things out, and they're on track now. They seem to be playing better football, and I think the other part of it is, Washington is right now currently, I think, in the 7th playoff spot in the NFC. So they're really the only team on that whole list that, if the playoffs started today, would be in the playoffs. But I don't know. I've watched, of course, because it's the NFC East, and there's some rule that we have to watch NFC East football every single week somewhere. I've seen that team play way too many times. They're not good, and they're not interesting, and they're not fun to watch, and they're just completely 100% meat and potatoes kind of try and muck up and win 10-9 type team. So I don't have any faith in that team.
Yeah, I like watching Miami right now. Their defense has been pretty good. Brian Flores has done a really good job the past couple seasons trying to reshape that defense and put it together. They've got a healthy Tua Tagovailoa. He's started to fill his way in there, and they're starting to make it work on offense. They're becoming a more interesting team by the week. Let's start talking about some of the things you want to talk about. We'll start with Jerry in West Elizabeth. Jerry, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Yeah, guys. I was wondering, what is Stephon Tuitt's injury? And will he be back next year? I didn't know even what's keeping him out.
Paul, if I'm not mistaken, was a knee injury. There was that he was dealing with. Also, there was the offseason situation with the death of his brother. That's another thing that's been going on. They ask Mike Tomlin this question every week, Paul, and every week it sounds less and less like they expect him to be back. So I'm gonna take my best guess and say he probably won't be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll play this year, and it won't shock me if he's not back next year. Looking at different, contract situations and things of the such, nobody really seems to know exactly what's going on with him. Mm-hmm. And, the Steelers have been very, very, clear. They're not going to tell us what's going on. How much of it is the knee, how much of it is the mental health stuff. It seems like he's healthy physically, but, mentally, if he's not healthy, and we've seen it with some of the gymnasts and whatnot, at the end of the day, if he can't perform, he can't perform. So I feel like, he's going to probably come back to play football next year, but I don't know that he'll be doing it in a Steelers uniform. I don't see any way that we see him playing this year, though.
Yeah, it's interesting how that kind of digressed. It started with, we're taking things kind of, one step at a time. We're hoping that he's back. And then it just went all the way down to, you know what, we don't have anything new for you, and we don't expect him back. So it's been a really sharp, turn to see it go this way. And to your point about next season, if we do see him back, I expect it to come with a serious restructuring of that contract, because I'm thinking, if I'm guessing correctly, it's worth at least $9 million for that cap hit next year. It's a sizable cap hit. So if they do bring him back and he is ready to play, I imagine them trying to rework that deal to bring that cap hit down somewhat to try to give themselves more breathing room with the cap space that they're going to have. We got Guy in Ligonier. Guy, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Thanks for taking the call. Paul, what do you guys think of the Pitt recruiting class? And did they get anybody in the transfer portal?
Good question, Paul.
I think that their main targets with the transfer portal have all been quarterbacks for the most part.
Yep.
And so that, to me, is a position they're not going to know, and they're not going to probably be able to go sign anybody till they have their offensive coordinator in place. As far as their class, it was very small. I mean, they weren't ranked, high or whatever, because, a lot of those rankings, volume means just as much as quality. But they got some really good football players. I think they got some pretty good linemen. They, as always, got a couple of really good skill position guys, and some defensive back type players. So they got some. They filled some needs. I think they got a few really good football players. They've got some beef with at least one of the linemen, and so I think the class overall is small, but it's pretty good.
You mentioned the beef. I'm thinking about the one lineman that comes to mind, and I completely blanked out on his name. If I remember this correctly, Paul, not only did he, win a lot of, conference honors and everything in his hometown, but was he not voted the player of the year as an offensive lineman? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
That's how highly heralded he was. So
right.
That's high praise.
That just tells you on film he's dominant. That's what it tells you. If people can pick out an offensive lineman that tells you he's doing a whole lot of damage.
Exactly. If a guy's that big of an impact maker, he's probably going to you hope that he can make an impact as soon as possible on this Pitt offensive line. And they will have some guys that they need to cycle back in and out there. Frank and Moon, you're on the Nightly Sports Call. Hello, Frank.
Yeah, hi. How are you tonight?
Good. What you got for us?
Just one thing. The kid you're talking about, the kid from Central Valley, the lineman for Central Valley, I think he's going to be a great Pitt player.
He's another good one, too, yeah. We were talking about, I think, his kid from Ohio. But Sean Fitzsimmons will be good, too, the Freilich Award winner, by the way.
Yeah, and the kid, and the thing about Pickett is I don't think there's any reason why he should not play in this game. First of all, Narduzzi, it shouldn't be his decision at all. And second of all, he did everything he had to do for that team to get them where they are right now, and he should be very happy that he can just sit and watch and get his money, because I think the kid did a tremendous job from his sophomore year up, and he got better and better every year. And I think this year proved how good he is, and I don't think anyone should make that decision but him.
Frank, appreciate the call. I've been making this case, Paul, for about close to 48 hours since the decision came down. And Paul, correct me if I'm wrong here. Since Pitt won the ACC championship and got to this bowl game, and if I remember this correctly, the ACC is going to get a nice little chunk out of the proceeds from this bowl game, and they'll distribute that amongst the teams in the league. Is that correct?
Well, that's what they do. They get all the bowl money from all of their bowls. Mm-hmm. I think, what do they have, 10, 11 teams in bowls?
I think so.
And then they split it up pretty much evenly, but there's a little bit of a tier when it comes to the travel expenses. You know what I mean? So,
correct.
Like, for instance, Pitt will get more money because to the Peach Bowl, they're theoretically going to travel more people there, more boosters or whatever, more of the band, whatever.
Right.
So they get a little bigger piece of the pie, but it's for the most part distributed pretty evenly.
Okay, to that point, that's going to happen. Pat Narduzzi, they're already talking about an extension with him, so that means he's going to get paid a little bit more. So he's getting his. So is it too crazy to think that the player that stands to gain from all of this happening, who pretty much did everything possibly, maybe even above expectations, to put the team in this position and got himself a finalist nod as a Heisman candidate, he's considered a first-round pick, he stands to gain. Now it's a problem? Seems strange to me.
Well, I mean, again, I got to be honest with you, Josh. I've heard far more people complaining about people who are giving Kenny Pickett a hard time than I've actually heard people giving Kenny Pickett a hard time. Most people, I had a bunch of phone calls tonight. I don't even know that I maybe had one where a guy was not, exactly supportive. But for the most part, if you look on social media, if you look at, after he posted, if you look at what people are actually saying, people are actually supporting it, and people understand it, and people are okay with it. I mean, there's a few, people, again, that are mostly outliers, but for the most part, I think that most people are okay with Kenny Pickett making this decision, just like every other player that makes this decision. And the whole point about it is, it's the Peach Bowl. And, no offense, it's fun. It's fun to be a New Year's Six game. Who won the Peach Bowl last year? The year before? The year before? I mean, it is what it is. It's a game that, at the grand scheme of things, it doesn't benefit Kenny Pickett to play the thing. He already won the game that matters the most in this season. There's nothing for him to gain now. That's
the same case that Jeff Hathorn made last week in that same chair on Saturday. Got to take a break. We'll wrap up when we come back. Stick around.